office all the time, blood work, everything. And they couldn't find what was wrong with me. They're sending me to all these specialists and still nothing. And, at one point I can remember sitting in the doctor's office being like, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah.
You have nothing to say. So I guess I'm just going to figure this out myself.
So you really had lost hope. And this itch was 3 years all over your body, constant?
Yeah, it started on my feet, and then it sort of just worked its way up, and I thought it was eczema.
Yeah.
And then it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And to the point where, I'd be sitting there in meetings with clients and being like, oh my gosh, this is the most uncomfortable thing. And I would excuse myself to the bathroom, and they'd have no idea. And, I'd be using their bathroom, and I'd be sitting up on the counter with my feet in their sink with the cold water running.
Right. Yeah.
They have no idea, right? I'd be going to networking events, and if I ever had to wear pantyhose, it'd be like, oh my God. It was so painful, and I was just getting at my wit's end, and it was a really hot summer.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, great. Now, and it was all the fires are going on, and I couldn't breathe. So I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have asthma. Excellent, right? And I would go to the doctor, and I was like, it really hurts in my chest, and I can't breathe. And they're just like, all right, okay, well, why don't you, take these anxiety pills? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to lean towards PTSD, just from some past experiences, just some unhealthy relationships. And
so they were really taking a mental health approach to your physical itching.
They 100% thought it was in my head.
What did you think about that?
Well, I had my husband was I started doing energy work at first because I was also doing that on the side. I was getting body talks done because I'm trying to take a different approach. You're trying to do everything from all angles. I'm trying acupuncture, trying body talks. I'm still going to the doctors. They're throwing me on steroids every once in a while, and that's not really working. And I'm trying all of this stuff. So when you kind of first start looking into energy work, and sometimes the videos, I think on Netflix, The Secret was out.
Okay.
Right? And it's okay, we can change this stuff with our mind, right?
Right,
so
the power. Yeah.
Maybe I am still crazy, I guess,
So that's how you felt. I'd like to actually, just if you won't mind, I wouldn't mind sitting with that for just a minute. That because you do go in with physical symptoms, and then with this itch, doctors are obviously baffled because you keep having to go from one doctor to the next doctor to the next doctor. And then because you're actually trying to figure this out for yourself, you are exploring all avenues, including energy work. And it's interesting that you were, well, maybe that I am crazy. I just had a show on mental health last week, and I think one of the reasons I want to touch on this a little bit is because of that dismissal, perhaps, and assumption that you were crazy in your head, or that must have been so frustrating to go through that process, and then suddenly you're even doubting now your mental health.
You get to a point where it was been 3 years. I couldn't sleep at night for various reasons, and the itch certainly escalated that.
Right.
To the point where I wasn't sleeping, and then I dropped 15 pounds in 3 weeks.
Whoa.
I'm at the doctor, and I went to a different one. I'm all right, I just keep trying different ones, right? And seeing if I can get these other opinions. And they're all really lovely people, I really they seem like they're really nice.
Yes.
And then it's not that they don't care.
No.
But they look at my history of what's in the folder, and they're like, okay, this girl's gone through some shit. So we're going to go with sort of like PTSD, anxiety. And the final doctor was like, we are going to get you a psychiatric evaluation. Now, I am remarried at this time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've lost like 15 pounds. And they're like, okay. And I was like, well, I guess I could go back to a counselor. And
how much did they ask you about your lifestyle? I'm just kind of getting thrown a little bit by you having lost 15 pounds and you're itching. It's been 3 years, and yeah.
They kept looking at it from, I think, the history of some events that would happen
making
a few years prior, and they're looking at like a single long position.
Yeah.
And they were looking at it from an anxiety approach, because there were some times that I did go through a little bit of depression,
because,
right?
Wow,
like,
you're itching.
I don't feel like I'm the only person that goes through a divorce and gets depressed. But
I can tell you no.
They were thinking that it was, piled on. So the doctor had said to me, you know what I think that you need to do?
Yeah.
Is run a marathon. And I go home and I tell my husband, he's like, the last thing you need to be doing is running a marathon.
So yeah, go ahead.
He was just sort of this voice of reason, and he just kept saying, Candace, you are not crazy. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. This is not in your head. There was something wrong. And he's from Ukraine, and he said to me, Candace, the doctors have got 6 weeks before I fly you to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we pay for someone to run every test in the book.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm so glad that you had somebody, because it was not PTSD. It was not anxiety. It was, in fact.
No. It was, in fact, Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had an 11.4 centimeter tumor in my chest.
And so at what point did they finally get off of this? I've had a couple of rough moments in my life. It's causing me, itching for 3 years. And now, we're looking at physical. Like, what finally, made the difference?
Chest x-rays.
Oh my gosh. Are you? So after 3 years.
It wasn't like, oh my gosh, we cracked this code. It was, I came in with chest pain, and I woke up and I thought, it was snowed right before Halloween.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, and I shoveled the walk because, I'm not a lazy person, even though my husband's like, don't do stuff like that because
right.
You look sick.
So you look physically ill.
Yeah. Oh, I did. Yeah. My mom's was crying on the couch one time because she said I looked yellow, and Victor be like, well, what's going on? I'm like, oh, Mom thinks I've got cancer.
Were you at any point, and I'm going to be frank about this, were you at any point pissed off that they assumed that it was your mental health and stopped looking for anything else?
It sounds weird, but there was probably a little bit of it. But at that time, I was just focusing on other things. And if anything, I was just relieved that I wasn't crazy.
Right, right.
When I remember it, and it was just like the movies where the doctor's voice kind of goes into the background, and he sits on the bed. And
yeah. When they sit on the bed, you know that ain't good.
Yeah, it's not good.
No.
The nurse would look at me when she was putting in an IV in my arm, and I was like, well, why? I was like, oh, is it bad? She goes, oh, no, it's just standard procedure. And I'm like, you're not looking me in the eyes.
Not for an itchy.
I had this feeling, right?
Yeah.
And they just didn't know. It took the doctors by surprise, because they just didn't know what to do with it, because it was so big and I was such a small person.
And how old were you?
I was relieved. You were sort of scared, and you kind of go into this. For me, I just kind of went into this calm stillness, okay.
Yeah.
This is what I got to do. I'm going to deal with this.
Right. It sounds like a sort of a blessing of a certain amount of shock, right? Where emotion gets numbed, head kicks in, and you're in do mode.
Yeah, I now have something that I can deal with.
Sure.
And at that time, it was like, this is a, it sounds crazy. This was a blessing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this is a blessing because now I've got something tangible. And I just think about it because my chest hurt that one time on that one day, just for me to get into the emergency.
Wow. And you were not anywhere near expecting lymphoma to be the diagnosis.
No, but if I would have ignored it, if I wouldn't have been with my husband, that goes to my mind. If I wouldn't have been with my husband, I probably would have brushed it off.
Right. He might have.
Oh, you know what? It's fine. And then the next day it would have been fine.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought of it. But it was like my husband that was like, Candace, you have chest pain. We're going to the doctor. And I just remember being somewhat annoyed with him a little bit because I'm like, why do you have to like fuss over everything? Can we get at least a cup of tea on the way? And he's like, yeah, and it's kind of like
And now you realize he saved your life.
Yeah, he did. Like he was such an advocate for me, right?
Yeah.
And it was that's a blessing in itself.
That is a big lesson to have learned, right? After that 3 years, getting this huge thing and realizing that your husband was the advocate for you. He was the one, the voice that just kept kind of pushing. How old were you at the time that you got that diagnosis?
2 years. I think I would have been 31. Yeah. No, 31 or 30.
31, 32, and you have lung cancer.
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Hodgkin. Okay, so explain what Hodgkin's, in a sense, lymphoma is then.
It's like with the lymph nodes, so you have them all over your body.
Right.
So you can have them sort of in your groin, in your armpits.
Gotcha.
Right here, you got them in your chest. For me, I had it isolated, in some cases you can have them, the swelling of the tumors all throughout your body.
Okay.
And I had it isolated specifically to my chest, and
it was flaring from that particular area.
Yes, it was. So I'd ask, can't you just take it out?
Yeah.
Can't you just cut it out?
Sure.
And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way because it's connected to your whole system.
Right. And it's throughout the whole system. So then what at that point, now that they discover it, what at that point was the to do? How did you have to proceed?
It wasn't very long. I had to get a biopsy to confirm that I had it.
Yeah.
And then it was like 2 weeks later, I was in chemo.
Yeah. Okay. And that chemo, did you have your child at that point? Because I know your mom.
Yeah.
And so you have a little person too.
She was 4 at the time.
4 at the time. Yeah. And now you're going through chemo. That advocating lesson, did that carry you throughout the rest of your treatments, etc.? Like, were you a little bit more stepping up? Was your husband a little bit more wary? Talk to me about your mind state at that point. Having gone through so long and then finally getting this diagnosis, wondering, I'm sure, what if we had kind of caught it earlier? I'm sure that had to have gone through your mind.
Honestly, I was taking it as an opportunity of this real spiritual growth opportunity, and I was just really open. I remember feeling like really open and being like, oh my goodness, like this is just going to take me on like this path. And I was at the point because I was going through, I married the man of my life, my dreams, but prior to that, I was going through such a difficult, just shitstorm, and I had friends leaving me. I had just my group was getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And so then when it had happened, I sort of looked around at my circle, and it was like I was just surrounded with this unconditional love.
Right.
And when you're so helpless and you're in the hospital room and you're going through this, like, people just just showed up for me.
Right.
And
that's an amazing feeling to understand. And I know, from my own personal experience, that sometimes it really isn't until you really can't do it for yourself that is one thing that you can sort of take away from an experience, is that how much you feel loved, right?
And it was hard, right?
Yeah. Humbling.
But it created this space to begin that relationship of loving myself.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, talk to me more about that. Self-love is not an easy thing for people, right?
No, and I feel like sometimes, I don't know, it's as women or single moms, we put ourselves on the back burner, right? Like, I mean, we're the last ones to eat. We'll definitely, you're driving your kid to daycare, and even though you fed them breakfast like 3 times, and you're going to, they want your muffin, which is your breakfast. I mean, you give it to them, right? Like, I was in this mindset of just being last. Like, that's just where I saw myself, just venturing through the world, that I just came last.
So was life sort of like...
then you sort of get into it, and all these things happen to you, and then you just think, well, maybe I deserve that, and it's... it kind of goes into that. I deserve that, and I get what's coming to me. When you, like I said, go through a divorce too, there's a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism coming at you.
Yeah, there's a lot of shame.
So some of that stuff that gets thrown at you starts to stick.
Well,
right?
Especially, I think you're right. I think you touched on a couple of things there. That self-worth piece often comes, and I think you hit on something. One of the pieces about being a woman, right, is that you must be perfect, and you must do, and you must look like you're doing it all, like a duck gliding across the water. Meanwhile, the feet are going like mad, right? You have to make it look effortless. And so oftentimes that does mean that women put themselves on the bottom of the list, because the list is that long, right? To be perfect is a really big task. And I think you also hit on it, the shame, right, that comes with not performing, not doing those things well, comes with judgment and criticism. You add the shame of a divorce on top of it, and self-care kind of hits a bottom, right? Clearly that had to change.
Yeah, I mean, you start to look at it differently. I mean, and you have this husband that, I'm sitting there bald with no eyelashes, and he would just like it was nothing. Just be like, you are just so beautiful. You are, the most beautiful woman I've ever met, and you just, and it's so great to hear that from somebody else, and it was wonderful. But what that did was create a safe space for me.
Right.
To start to feel that for myself.
That's amazing, really, because when you think about how much image matters as a woman, hair, eyelashes, right, makeup, clothes, that whole idea of you must have the perfect look, right? And then, yes, for somebody, your husband, right, to look at you and say, you're stunning, you're beautiful, you're my person. You can't help but suddenly all of those ideas of what you thought you had to be come crumbling down and be faced with, holy shit, I'm beautiful. And I get it, right? Like, that had to have hit you pretty profoundly, of course.
Yeah, it really does, right? From someone that I've always sort of, and I don't think I'm the only one, you base sometimes your success on what you look like, but that's been stripped away. Like, your vanity is gone.
I love that you laugh at that.
Gone.
It is gone. You're done. It feels to me like when you're in labor, right? Do you really care what your hair looks like?
No. It was not the first thing that came to my mind.
No. And most women can have at least that inkling, but I imagine you are fighting now for your life, Does it really matter you have hair or eyelashes? Probably no.
No.
Yeah. How wonderful. And I mean, seriously, you better hold on to your husband, because after that many women hear that, I think he's going to be very popular. Very popular man. Now, how long did it take until you got the I'm, healed, cancer-free conversation come up after that?
When I finished, I shot out of the gate. It was I had this whole come to Jesus moment, whole experience. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were times I cried myself asleep being like, God, you're gonna get me through this, right?
Yeah.
you're gonna let me live, right? Because, and there were some times that it was hard. And I don't want to take away from that. But that first time I was in this come to Jesus, everything is just I'm just so connected with everyone, and it's just such a beautiful thing. And oh my gosh, a butterfly landed on my doorstep today, and that's definitely a sign, And I just you look at everything
for meaning
slowly, right? You see everything, right? Putting on those prescription glasses for the first time, you see the leaves, you start to you look at everything in a new way. So when I was finished, I was like, that's it, this has never happened again. Thank you, God, that was a beautiful lesson.
Right.
I learned unconditional love, so great.
You're in gratitude.
Thank you, cancer. Thank it all, right? This is just so great, and I'm going to shoot out of the gate, and I'm going to go live my life. And that's what I was doing. I was climbing mountains. My husband's like, I'm not really a hiker, and I'm like, see ya. I'm going to the mountains.
Yeah.
And I started doing things for myself, and I completed my Reiki course because I took the rate about, it was 6 weeks before I was diagnosed. I took a Reiki course, and I was like, that's it. I'm going to heal myself. Screw everyone else. I was going to do this myself, and I took this first Reiki course.
Yeah.
And then obviously, we came to the diagnosis, but then afterwards I finished my Reiki course. People started asking me to work on them, which was just so, it was just a little surprising because I never saw myself as really doing that.
Right.
And here I am just kind of going through, and I felt like I was, getting much stronger and just ramping up and just really coming into my higher self. Now,
it's interesting. I caught something, and I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute. You have this wonderful moment in your journey where you realize you can take care of yourself, but there's this huge loving community around you, all of these people that you realize now you need. And then you kind of switched and go, I'm good. I'm going to heal myself. I can do this myself. I'm going into Reiki. It sounds to me like you almost you're like, yeah, okay, thanks, got the lesson. And then you sort of went maybe back a little bit into, yeah, I don't need y'all, I'm good.
I think it was when you first start dating somebody?
Yeah.
And it kind of all about them, and you're just like, oh my gosh, all these feelings, and it's so great.
Sure, the infatuation. Yeah.
I almost, and it sounds really arrogant to say it this way, but I was just so astounded by this internal power that I just discovered within myself, that I started dating myself.
I love that. You were infatuated with yourself. The first step to self-love. You became infatuated. No, that's not bad. That is so not bad. Do not dare say that is bad. I think that's awesome. I think we should all be infatuated with ourselves. At least for a time being. It only lasts 3 to 6 months, so they say.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then, but I mean, that's where I was at. I was going out and I was doing things, and my daughter and I would play Dora the Explorer, but my relationships and my connections were still never better than ever. The ones that were still there were still still my people, and we still connected.
Right.
I still love them and appreciated them, and I give them so much credit, because the friends that I've had and the family that I had got me through it. I couldn't have done it without them.
Right.
But it was like, I also need to have this relationship with me now, and just, I was like celebrating what I could do. And like I said, I felt like I was just walking around being like, oh my gosh, like, there's a crack in the cement and there's a flower coming through that. And I'm like, wow, that's beautiful.
Well, you know what? Looking for moments of gratitude in the small things.
I don't understand you, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, we've all been in those infatuated stages, I think. I hope. My goodness, if you go through life and you haven't been through infatuation, you just got to figure that out, because it's sort of worth it. But when you can be infatuated with yourself and your life, I mean, I think you're right. I think loving yourself, or we get this narcissistic idea of what that is, but that's actually from a place of not loving yourself, right? Narcissism. Where you're talking about loving your authentic self, so that you could actually then, like you say, your other relationships and loving other people was so much more there and authentic. I just love that you fell in love with yourself so that other people could love you back.
Mm-hmm. Like, I would have felt guilty before, like, I said, going to a hike, right? And I mean, I have a very healthy marriage. So, when he's like, I really have no desire to hike Crick Lake. I'm just like, I hear ya.
Yeah.
But I'm going. Where before I'd been like, well, that's okay.
Right.
We could go do something that you want to do.
Now, how did he react? So when you said, okay, I'm going, you can stay, was it the end of the world? Did you suddenly feel like you were not worthy of love?
No. I went with somebody else and had like a beautiful time, and we just really connected, right?
Yes. So self-love is not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of a really nice hike.
Yeah, it was a beautiful hike.
Yeah.
We should really do Crick Lake when this is all done.
Okay, I've never been, so yes, you're on. I just need a cane. So I'm going to also zip back, because I don't think our listeners or viewers might have caught that when she said, when I went through this the first time. That's right, boys and girls. Candace, you became clear, so you thought of lymphoma, and then bum.
Yeah, and then I relapsed.
Right. And what was the space between, you're all ready to go, everything's good, we've cleared it up, to, sorry, Candace, round 2?
It was one word,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't a polite word. It was a swear. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Start with F, end with kangaroo.
It certainly does. I was not feeling the blessings. I was not feeling the love. It was a WTF to the universe. And it was like I was on this high. And it's like the higher you rise, the harder you fell. And I fell hard.
Right, because you thought you licked this, and you found self-love, and of course you learned your lesson, and Jesus helped you, get back when you asked him to, so you were supposed to be done. Am I getting it?
Yeah, and then it was like it happened again, and it was just soul-crushing, and it was... I didn't... The first time I sort of publicly posted and was like, hey, here's my journey and this is how it was, and shared that sort of with the world.
Yeah.
And this time it's like my circle tightened even then some, and I had a private group, and I was very careful who I let in to that group. And it was just, and that's where before I used to talk about what the blessing was and always a silver lining.
Yeah.
In this group, it was like, this sucks.
Right.
Like, this is hard. I was breaking down. I was just, it was absolutely traumatic of an experience. And this time the round was like 1,000 times worse than what I experienced before.
Do you mean physically? Because I get totally mentally, but was it also physically? Like, were you...
Physically, yeah. Also physically.
So what happened second time?
Sorry?
So what was the diagnosis the second time?
It was just, they considered it a relapse of Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I had to do all of this in the Calgary at the Tom Baker.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's when I think, before I lived in a little bubble the first time, but this time it was reality where like you realize like, shit, cancer's bad.
Like, okay, if you haven't heard that, folks, let's just go over that one again. Let's do that together. Ready?
It's just
cancer is bad.
And
yeah.
You were just there. I was really starting to become hard on myself for not being this positive ray of sunshine. And I'm someone that is positive, and I look for hope, and I look for signs, and I look for, because I'm a glasses half empty, and I want it to be okay.
Yeah.
But there were moments being like, oh my God, am I not going to make that? Am I not going to make it through this?
Right. Because we're meant to find, like, we're built as humans to find meaning, but you're struggling, if I'm understanding, finding meaning in this one. So how do you pivot?
My conversations with God was not like, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really open to the lessons. It was WTF.
Yes.
And was I not clear?
Right.
Did you think that because I thought that this was a blessing that I wanted to do it again?
Yeah. I think I can kind of...
It was not like that. And then I feel really guilty. That's another thing that we do. I feel like sometimes as women is guilt, one, but okay, anger is really unattractive. We're not supposed to be angry. We gotta, we've got to be
charming.
Of grace,
sunshine,
right?
Grace, the duck on the water.
Calm, and, and we just take things with stride. And I really try to pride myself with having integrity and classy. So when I'm pissed off, I couldn't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd be sitting in there, and they'd have you go through a million tests up there. Like, I was up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Running around, going to all these tests, like separate tests, right across all the town. And I had to get my heart checked. So I'm sitting there with the heart doctor, and he's just talking, and I'm just like, yep. And he goes, you don't seem very happy. Do you want to talk about that? And I
want to know what was going on in your head, not your mouth. What was going on in your head?
It took this time I was like really honest, and I said, I have been running, and before I'd be like, you know what, I'm good, just processing. But I was like, no, you guys have me running around all over the bloody city. And I'm sitting here when you looked at scans to tell me it's okay. Why couldn't you have done that? Like, you guys are wasting my time when I want to get home for Halloween to go trick-or-treating with my daughter before it's shipped up here into Calgary. So this look that you're feeling, and if you want me to talk to a psychologist, not right now. I hear you, and I hear your concerns.
Yes.
But right now, I'm just pissed off, and you got to let me sit in that.
I'm actually impressed.
The fist, and that was like, I remember, and then I left the after she did that, and he's like, okay, well, if you ever feel like you need to like yell at somebody or to let it out, like,
good,
give me a call. And he was really good.
Excellent.
I remember that I just like broke down. Like, I called my friend, and I just like broke down, being like, and I get that they have to do all these tests, and there's certain protocols, and I got to do all of these things. But as a person, I was just so overwhelmed, and I was tapped out. Like, I was appointments since 7 a.m. and I felt like I gave half my blood. Worth of vials to have me tested for every single thing to make sure I could endure it. And then I had to sit down, and I kicked the social worker off my team.
Okay, so I actually am wondering, because you're right, there is a marked difference between the way you're dealing it, but I'm actually feeling like, and I'm asking you, were you more authentic the second time around than the first. The first sounds still like you're answering questions to make other people feel comfortable or to be, Miss Rosie Sunshine. And the second time you're going through it, when somebody says, you look like you're angry, you're going, oh yeah, no, and you were bluntly honest. It sounds to me like you were way more authentic.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had an edge this time for sure.
Your anger was there and you were showing it.
Somebody had tried to call me out and say, your post in your private group. I mean, most of the part of everybody in that group were like, Candace, you're like, thank you for being so real and authentic. And I feel like I'm there in the hospital with you because you are sharing and you're bearing your soul.
Yeah.
And then I would get some comments like, you sound like you're really defensive. And you're first kind of like, whoa, like maybe I shouldn't be defensive. Why shouldn't I? And you know what, like when you're going through something like that, and I had some really amazing friends that said, that you were allowed to feel how you were allowed to feel.
Yes.
Like it is not a good time when you're in the hospital getting poked and prodded and, you're
right.
stepping on the scale for like the 10th time that day because they want to make sure you've got enough hydration, right?
Yeah, no, and really, in order, if you weren't feeling anger, if you weren't feeling bitter, wouldn't that be a flag?
Yeah, I definitely. So at the time, I was starting to feel bad, a little bit about myself, like I'm not handling it, and I had some amazing friends saying, you are handling it. This is, I would expect you to break down and cry. So, right? Like you were in the hospital.
Yeah. Of course you would. That validation.
With a bucket and I'm alone and I'm in Calgary and I actually had to be in there over Christmas.
So right? you get that validation from those people that were really close to you. And I heard you say that for your second round, you put some pretty big boundaries up and even kicked a social worker off your case.
Yes, I did. I was just like, when I first sat down, I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then she started telling me that I needed to focus on getting day passes. And I need to focus on getting out of the hot. And I know how chemo hits me the first time because I've gone through it.
Right.
It knocks me out. Like, and I've got friends that were witnesses and would sit with me in the room while I was getting chemo. Like, they'd have to help me walk out of the room. Like, it was just, I'm not a very big person.
Right.
So it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
And so the idea of going out.
Trying to tell me that I need to go out and get day passes. And she was very, and this is how you're going to be feeling, and this is where it is. And that's where I kind of get a little bit of, hey, you know what? Like, you don't get to speak for me on how I'm going to feel.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like, thank you so much. I know your intentions are good, but you and I are just not really connecting.
Well,
and
yeah.
I said that to the other nurse too, and she said, she's gotten feedback like that. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm not just going to say it about her. I'm going to say it like to her. Like, right. You and I are not really connecting. I'm going to connect more with this social worker. And thank you so much for taking me this far. Like, all the best to you. Like, not, it was just not angry, but it was like, I just can't have somebody in my room that I'm not connecting with.
I just think that moment, that ability to set up boundaries, that didn't seem to come the first time. It came the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were dropping that whole facade.
Like, we're so scared of being angry, but angry is just an emotion in the rainbow, and it can be used.
Oh, it can be very helpful. At least it informs you of something is wrong in my world, right, to start with. But it can be very empowering, don't you think? I mean, I know in my personal experience that sometimes it was anger that was the only thing that got me up off the floor, right? From feeling, tragedy.
Yes, I actually even told a friend. She said some things, and I said, you know what? Like, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm not really sure I like the delivery, but thank you for making me angry. Like, thank you, because I needed that, because I was like giving up here. So I really needed that anger, and I genuinely meant it.
You were grateful for the anger.
I was.
No, and there's a function, I think, otherwise we wouldn't really have it, right? Was there a recognition that this is not a place I have to stay? Like, I can't stay here any longer. Was there a pivot point?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was a tornado of emotions. Mm-hmm. Like, it really was. And I went through all over the spectrum, you know,
sure,
in 5 minutes, let alone a day, like in 5 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm all over the map, right?
It is the best of days, it is the worst of days.
Doesn't really exactly help control that too, right?
Right. What, you sound like you certainly are honoring your experience and telling your story. Was there something in particular that helped you sort of was it a gradual move out of, you know, the anger and the fear and the resentments and those lower kind of feelings, or was it something that just sort of hit you as like, no, I'm good, I can move on now?
It was, no, I'm good. Like, I mean, I was angry. I'm like, okay, I'm going to let myself be angry for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk it through. Yeah. And then I'm going to, like, move on, and like there's no resentment, there's no
so
you know, there's none of that,
what do you,
but it made me let go of the anger and resentment of my past too.
Oh, that's interesting.
I didn't even realize I was still holding on to that as well.
What do you mean?
You gotta let that shit surface so you can let it go.
So are you saying that cancer was bringing up old wounds, old anger, old upsets?
In some ways, yes. I mean, I think it was bringing it up letting it go. And I think it was just sort of all sort of like coming to the surface, and it was just kind of, I mean,
sure,
emotion was emotion. Like, I mean, anger is anger. It's how it feels, whether or not you label it and tie it to certain things.
Yeah.
But all I know is, I mean, I had this anger and it came up like hard. But then I found myself, you know, it was a month ago, sitting at situations from my past and just genuinely not feeling angry about it.
Right.
You know? So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, that anger is gone.
So
it's not until I had that moment to think about it that I was like, oh, I'm not really angry anymore.
Are you cancer-free at this moment?
I am. I just actually had my call today from the doctor.
That's
that I'm
awesome.
in my 3 month remission.
3 month remission.
Again, I'm on the phone, and I say to them, like, do you have any questions or concerns? I'm like, yes.
How many times do I?
I said, this is like the second time I had to advocate for myself to tell you that I was sick.
Oh.
I seem to fall through the cracks here. Like, you guys thought I was crazy.
Okay, the first time they thought you were mentally ill, that you had post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety, and of course it wasn't, it was lymphoma. What about the second time? Are you saying that you had to go and push again?
Yes, I did.
What?
I worked out with my brother, but I kept noticing I was having lighter energy. And then I had this chest pain, and I just said to my husband, I have this similar chest pain, and it just doesn't feel right. Like, something is off. Something is not good. And it kind of hurts when I breathe in the same way that it did before. So I go into the emergency, and they do a CT X-ray, and they said, we think it's like looks bigger, but we're not really sure. And they like pull it out, and they like are showing me the X scans. And I'm like, guys, I don't even know. Like, you could be showing me like a doodle of a monkey. Like, I have no idea what this means, right? So I said, I think you need to call the oncologist. So when I went into the oncologist, and I started saying like, something is just not right, and they're like, you know what, chest pain is not part of the symptoms of lymphoma. And I mean, you could tell it's having a panic attack. And I was like, yeah, but I had it the first time, right? Like, it's, you know, you could tell it. I'm like, anxiety was coming through, and I was getting like, you know, louder and panicking and crying. And they said, you know, we're going to run the PET scan as a precaution, but you really don't need to, like, we're really not concerned here. And you know, they ran the PET scan, and sure enough, it came back, and it was again like, I mean, but this time they called me on the phone to tell me like I was home alone, and it was just
from the very
beginning,
really
a heartbreaking situation, right? Because they, you know, the first thing they said is, what are you more comfortable with, stem cell therapy or radiation? And I'm like, I don't know.
Are you answering this on the phone? Are you having to answer that question on a phone?
I was having to answer it on the phone.
Without your husband?
Without my husband there.
And
it was like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, it was, and I said that, I just said to her, and it was from a nurse, and I said, you know, what do you think that I should do? Oh, well, I'm not really, you know, equipped to handle that. And I said, well, neither am I. Like, you know, she goes, do you think that maybe I should get the doctor to call you? I'm like, I think that that's fair.
They make you go into the doctor if you think you have strep throat, to discuss it, swab it, and get a prescription. Okay, maybe outside of COVID. I can't imagine having a nurse asking you, a patient, what you're supposed to do. I mean, this probably did not instill in you another level of confidence.
It didn't, and that's why I thought, like, it really didn't. And I mean, I felt very alone.
Yeah.
In there, like, just screaming, trying to be heard. And I mean, and I did say, I mean, and it wasn't like I just said, okay, all right, well, that's okay.
Right.
I just said, you know, when the doctor called me, I just said, you know, this really wasn't appropriate. Like, you can't call people when they're alone. You can't do that. Right.
And then ask them what they want for treatment, like 2 minutes after. I just want to say,
and then we just sort of like moved on. But I mean, I do want to speak still highly of the medical system. I know it sounds like I'm shitting on them.
No, that would be me. Yeah, that would be me, because I have to tell you, Candace, if I was your mama or your big sister, I'd have been all over this shit. I've been all over it with your husband. I have to be quite honest with you. But I do understand that, I mean, people are, you know, flawed, and we do have those moments. And what I am so grateful for you is that you did have your husband as an advocate. And I mean, I don't know you, but I have to tell you, I am so proud of you, because I just hear what a nice girl you were through that first bout of cancer, and then what a lion you became for yourself going through it a second time. Do you feel like you have that transformation?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I mean, some people took it as edginess or defensiveness.
Good. Let them take it that way.
That's fine.
Yes.
But
I once had actually somebody say to me, and it was a social worker, and it was in a very kindly meant way, but they said, Dawn, you're going to need to fight for this. And as a woman, as who you are, if you feel like you are getting bitchy, you are just being assertive enough. So I think that honestly is a message that women need to hear, because I think you were alluding to it earlier, that when men get assertive, it's men being assertive. When women get assertive, they're being bitches. Let's make no bones about that. That exists.
And I had to become very direct, and they have protocols in for a reason. And I said, like, I had 90% of my experiences when I got in there was really great. Like, my doctor in there, like, I absolutely loved her. And but then they have protocols. And sometimes the protocols, which protect them legally, just don't make logical sense. Like, I had the most severe heartburn, and they had me on this, like, not as advanced, like, not as, there are different levels, right, of how much, like, patient you care. So there was just, like, 2 nurses on this entire floor, and I had severe heartburn, and my uncle Mike was visiting me, and I couldn't even eat because it was just so severe. And they're just like, I'm like, okay, I ring the bell, like, I really need some Tums.
Right.
And they were like, oh, well, you don't really have, like,
Tums written down on your...
ordered for, like, another 2 hours.
You needed a prescription for something that your husband could have gone to the pharmacy?
And it's really hard, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, do not swear, like, have that grace, have that class. And I'd be like, just so I'm understanding, I need a prescription for something I can go downstairs and get from the vending machine? Like, I just...
Right. Like, did you want to just say, do you mind if I go for a walk for a minute with some change?
I did. I was just like, in a total tantrum fashion. I was like, I will go get this myself. But then I marched myself out there, and you got to keep in mind, like, I'm really weak, so, like, the mental was like, I'm going to show you.
You're just doing it because.
Sorry, I'm going to get my Tums. But I walk over to the elevator, and I'm like, shit, I can't walk much farther, so this is really uncomfortable. Like, how do I...
You are going to go whether you collapse on the floor of the elevator or not.
Uncle Mike is, like, watching me, right? Like, he's in the room, and he's just like, Candace, go lay down into your bed, and I will go and get you your Tums. I'm like, thanks so much, Uncle Mike. And I kind of, like,
somebody gets
back to my room, like, kind of eyeing up the nurse. And I'm sure, like, in their mind, they're just like, what?
This is a perfect case of where rebellion, though, empowered you. It totally empowered you. I mean, maybe stupidly if you'd have fallen or whatever, but still, you had to have felt like you got a little bit of your power back.
Oh, I did, but you do, and I think I even said that in a post, because, like, you fight for your own personal power, because it's so easy when you're in that hospital, because the nurses, they do care, and they want to do so much for you, but it's almost like enabling, right? Where it's like, do you want me to wrap your arm up? And some days you're like, shit, sure,
right,
yeah, go ahead and do that, like, and you're saying, hey, I will let you, you'll let them do it, and the next thing you know, like, you're gone. And I had to, like, fight that resistance and that urge to be like, okay, like, I draw the line at them showering me, okay, like.
But you're right, it has to be
week,
and it has to be so long
where you would you would almost need that help, but you do fight for those things that you can do yourself, because it becomes so easy for them to do it, and then you can't rely on them on a crutch, and you get into this point of almost like succumbing to it. It's like, it's a really weird feeling, because you kind of just you just kind of get up, you just kind of give up, and you're just like, okay, well, that's where sometimes that anger helps you.
Yes, it can be very functional, and let's, like from a nurse's perspective, doctor's perspective, right? When you're looking at same person, twice had cancer, handled it totally differently, needed something totally different each time, it has got to be incredibly hard, right, to navigate what a person needs as they need it. Like, there's absolutely no doubt. However, yes, Tums would have been great, I'm sure. But to handle your emotional needs, I acquiesce that would have been I'm sure very, very difficult. How, if, and this isn't going to happen, but how do you think moving forward, you are moving into adversity? Heaven forbid you have to go through this again, but we know that as life progresses, you know, you're going to hit, you know, peaks and valleys just like everybody else. Do you think you have become an advocate outside of cancer for yourself?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You definitely become an advocate for yourself because you have to.
And
right?
your daughter?
Like, that's just not going to go away.
Yeah.
When I talk on, I lost my train of thought there. When I do still get chemo brain, by the way. Like, I'll be talking and I'll be like, it's gone. You do have to advocate for yourself. And even when I was talking to the doctor and I said, look, my concern, guys, is that I fell through the cracks, and this is today.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I said, you guys don't get to see my blood work. Nothing comes through on that.
Yeah.
So you guys just all you do is just give me blood work tests every 3 months.
Right.
And that's fine, but it obviously doesn't tell you anything when I'm the one that has to walk into the hospital and I was like, hey, by the way, check me out.
Yeah.
I said, so I don't know if there's nothing you can do about it, but I'm letting you know I'm concerned. Like, it worries me. I want this to be the last time. And they said, okay, well, what would you like to do? And I was like, well, what are my options? And they said, well, we could give you a CT scan every 6 months. I'm like, let's do that.
Good for you. You know? Yes.
Let's do that. I said, because I'm not slipping through these damn cracks again. Like, but here's the thing is advocating for yourself is never going to go away. And I remember sitting there, because I said that when I was a bit more angry, and I was talking to one of the nurses. She was a nurse navigator up at the Calgary, and she's like, you know, Candace, like, you're always going to have to navigate for yourself.
Yeah.
You have those moments of being like, you know, pissed off that you fell through those cracks again.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, oh.
But she's right.
Really? Like, really? Like, you guys just can't, I can't just, like, take these tests and you guys to know. And it was like that kind of that moment. Like, you never stop advocating for yourself. And in
any situation, for any of your family members, any for you, any friends, that's right. Because if anything, I know you have a favorite quote from Brené Brown. And it was something about making an assumption. Can you tell us what that was?
That I always like to assume that people are doing the best they can.
Right. But that does mean that they're flawed.
Yeah, being human is imperfect, and
so the trust,
no perfect way to handle every situation, and it's just so individual. And we're not cookie cutters.
Okay, talk to me a little bit about that cookie cutter thing.
Well,
because I know that your experience was that your situation did not present typically.
No, it didn't. I mean, 1/3 of patients get itchiness.
Yeah, 1/3 is still a lot.
The second time, but here's the thing: is everybody knows somebody that has had cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would get so many messages from varying ways to cure my cancer. Or cure the cancer, not my cancer. I don't want to put labels
from doctors or lay people, or
so they would be like, okay, I would get messages like, here is how you make your own like vitamin C kits.
Oh, I see.
That are as good as the intravenous stuff that you would get. Here's a YouTube video on how to heal it with your mind.
So it becomes really difficult.
Maybe you have a soul contract with cancer. You should probably go explore that, right?
A soul contract with cancer.
I know somebody that went down to Mexico and they did this, and this.
Yeah.
Or I know someone that healed it just with this, or they took iodine, or they took special honey, and here's the thing, is that cancer may be classified into various different types, but it is not a cookie cutter situation. Every body is going to respond differently. Some people were concerned that I was even considering chemo. Some people are like, no, chemo is going to poison yourself. There are all these different ways. I mean, I literally, right before I went in, I saw a Facebook post from somebody that was like basically saying that, pharmaceutical companies want to have a cure for cancer and they want to kill us. And I'm like, not helpful.
That sounds a lot like the COVID conspiracies going around right now. Not helpful.
Right? So, I was like, okay, whether or not I'm overly sensitive, which is probably the case, and that's okay.
No.
I'm not on Facebook right now. I'm probably going to give you an unfollow, just because it's just not what I need for my own healing energy space. But there are so many different ways. Like, I used a combination of Reiki, of meditation. I tried various different things. There were some people saying, you know what, you need to eat all of these, like, hemp flakes. And I'm like, okay, they look and taste like fish food. I don't have an appetite. That's not going to work for me.
Tell me.
It sounds, people come at you from theory, or because of things that they've seen or things that have worked for them.
And they're coming from and they're coming from a good place. But if you had to give advice to somebody who is facing what you were facing, how would you tell them to make a decision on how to treat?
I would definitely encourage them to trust their instincts and trust their gut.
Yeah.
Because we all have that.
Yeah.
And people come at it externally, regardless, the intentions were so good.
Yeah.
And they were really good. I don't want to take away from that because it was given in love.
Well, and maybe too, like, some of those might have resonated with you and you went, oh, you know what? That feels good to me, right? And so you don't want to have something that should before you pass by you. There's
a balance of being open.
Yes.
And also closing the door on bullshit too.
Right. And just that boundary needed to, as I hear you say it, drawn for yourself. You just unfollowed or did not pay attention to the information that was not speaking to you.
Yeah.
Right. How do you, I know the first time you were thinking, oh, cancer, and some people say, cancer was a blessing, thank you for the lessons, and this is how you kind of came out of the first round. What do you think about cancer now, and how have you made meaning of the experience now?
No, cancer is not a blessing.
No, I can hear that.
It is not. And if it is a blessing for somebody else, I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah.
Because that gives them some good feelings to move forward from, and me also how they, the path of their life. This time that was not a blessing. It was hard. It was horrible. It was alone. But there's a saying, and it comes from a elder that I have just really connected with at the Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump.
Yeah.
They're very, very spiritual, and we just sort of connected on a very spiritual level.
Yeah. And what did
the best advice he ever told to me, and it hit me, and I carried that with me even through my treatment. He had said that, storm clouds are going to come over you.
Mm-hmm.
But they are temporary.
Yes.
The goal, he's like, you know what? Our society likes to put labels on things because it makes it tangible.
Yeah.
It's either good or it's bad. It's good or it's bad. He's like, try to
categorize
take the best out of every situation.
Yeah.
That works better for me when I take that as a goal. when I assume that people have good intentions.
Yeah.
And I try and take the best out of every situation. So what did that experience give me?
Yeah.
It brought me into some pretty dark times, but there's that saying that goes, I'm not looking to escape my darkness, I'm learning to love myself there. And the appreciation I have for my body, like, you know, I couldn't even touch my knees. And now when I'm doing yoga position, as eloquent or as imperfect as it is, I catch myself smiling, because it's like, wow, like, look at what my body can do. Like, they wiped me out. Like, they wiped my entire
immune system.
Like, I'm immune compromised because they took everything out of it.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, we're going to give you some good cells back, the stem cell transplant, and we're going to let your self be rebuilt.
Yeah.
And my body just took it and said, okay, and it just did it. Like, our bodies are just so beautiful, and they can do so much for you. And I learned such an appreciation for my body, where I was much more critical of it, I think, beforehand.
You mean you're more than hair and eyelashes?
Yeah, I mean, I lost my eyelashes again. Actually, I lost it like on one eye, and I kept them on the other. So
did you make fun of that? I would have.
Yeah, and I mean, and then I lost my hair again. I'm regrowing it, but like I said, one of the best. I'm a cool person.
Yeah, you got edge. I like it.
I could be changed, but what happens to me? But I refuse to be reduced by it.
Oh, can you say that one more time, please?
It's Maya Angelou. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it.
You know, and I can't imagine, Candace, ending on a better note. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been so distracted that I haven't told you for the past hour and almost 10 minutes that we are here with Candace Dyzhlenko, Reiki practitioner and freelance marketing consultant. So if you need a little bit of marketing in this COVID time, I think I know a gal. And she's a powerful force in this universe, as you heard here tonight. Candace, thank you so much for joining us here on Jess FM. It has been a pleasure and a gas, and I'm really glad that we aren't governed by the CDC.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and I will take you up on that hike to where?
Crypt Lake.
Crypt Lake.
Waterton.
Okay, we are booking that trip. Okay, thank you, Candace, and I'm sure tonight, if you've got some well wishes that you can send, some prayers, some energy, feelings of goodness, please send them to Miss Candace here, because we do not want to hear that the clouds passing over you again is the big C word again. So I'm quite confident things are going to move forward, and yes, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure on Get Naked with Dawn. Good night.
Thank you so much. Bye.